people feel like they're alone. Whereas when you're transitioning a racehorse into a more leisurely life, it's nice to be surrounded by people that get it. British horse racing is the only equine industry that genuinely looks out for their horses from birth to death, because we've got the aftercare element for retired animals. And
The
there's
better place to find out what people are needing with their horses, but also we are really excited to learn more about people's stories of that. We all need to work together for the best interests of our horses.
Hello and welcome to the Curious Equestrian podcast with me, Anna Louise, and today a very special episode all about Britain's first ever thoroughbred census, which has been launched to help improve traceability of former racehorses after they retire from the sport. The Thoroughbred Census has been initiated and run by the Horse Welfare Board. Later on, we'll be chatting to an equine research expert at Hartpury University, one of the team members behind the census, and we'll be finding out all about the magic of the retired racehorse. First, we welcome Philippa Gilmore, Head of Welfare Operations from Retraining of Racehorses. Philippa has been a proud owner of former racehorses for a number of years, and her transition from working in the equine feed industry to the retraining of racehorses was the perfect opportunity to embrace both her love of thoroughbreds together with protecting the horses' welfare. Philippa is responsible for the delivery of the safety net for those horses in need of charitable support, working to ensure those horses are rehabilitated, retrained and rehomed to have a good life. Welcome to the podcast, Philippa. Please tell us the mission and the goals of ROR, Retraining of Racehorses.
it's in my stable, and that what have I done? What do I do? So it's picking people up and actually giving them support in transitioning that horse into its new life. And that education program also extends to ridden work. So we have a program of club nights and clinics and camps. So it's grown up pony club. So you can come along and get involved and enjoy whatever you want to do, whether you're brave enough to leave the ground or whether you just wish to stick to the flat work, showing and dressage. So it's there in a really supportive environment, because quite often people feel like they're alone. Whereas when you're transitioning a racehorse into a more leisurely life, it's nice to be surrounded by people that get it. It's a really nice supportive environment. And then we provide just a pathway for them to then go on and compete. So we have a series of competitions, so it just guides them through. And the competition series is open to all registered horses and is everything from an intro dressage test to, we have our NTF sponsored eventing championships, which is held at Gatcombe Park every year. So everything all along the way.
And what sort of challenges do retired racehorses face as they start to transition to a different phase of life after they've been racing?
There's lots of myths out there that once a racehorse, always a racehorse, and I'm going to get in open spaces and he's going to want to go. Actually, racehorses see so much through their careers that ordinarily they are the most straightforward horses, but they're super smart. And with super smart can come trouble. So they learn really good stuff really easily, but they can equally learn naughty stuff very easily. So it's like having a border collie at home instead of a Labrador.
Yes, I know what that's like. They are athletes,
They
aren't
are.
they? These animals, border collies,
It's
thoroughbred racehorses.
exactly that. So that transitioning period, a lot of the time in racing, they know what's happening every minute of the day. So that's very routine and everything happens at the same time. So it's a very settled environment. Actually, racehorses see so much through their careers that ordinarily they are the most straightforward horses, but they're super smart. And with super smart can come trouble. So they learn really good stuff really easily, but they can equally learn naughty stuff very easily. So it's like having a border collie at home instead of a Labrador.
Yes, I know what that's like. They are athletes, aren't
It is.
they? These animals, border collies,
It's
thoroughbred racehorses.
exactly that. So that transitioning period, a lot of the time in racing, they know what's happening every minute of the day. So that's very routine and everything happens at the same time. So it's a very settled environment. And quite often they're moved into DIY livery yards where lots of things happen at lots of different times of the day. So they can take some time to adjust to that. So, ordinarily a lot of DIY livery yards, you'll find people turning out at different times. So it might be that the horse gets upset initially seeing other horses go out before it. And it's just that transition. It's that, and it's just about management, actually. It's in the nicest way, it's not rocket science. It is literally about management. I have a crazy busy life anyway. So I'm terribly routine. I've got two former national hunt superstars and they have to be in that routine too. So they know what's happening at what part of the day. The other thing is being that the athlete that they are, they're used to being exercised. So they're a bit of a Porsche of the car world. They like to get on and have a job. And there are some that adjust beautifully to just being big paddock pets. And we have wonderful stories of horses that have taken to people's children and they look after everybody in the family and just really nice stories. But they do like to have their little brains occupied. And yeah, that's essentially it. Hacking out once every 3 weeks can bring you a few challenges. They like consistency. They just like to know what's happening. And yeah, it's feeding regime and management, and 90% of them adjust beautifully.
And how much work do you have to put into them, Philippa, when they first come to you to transition them into that new routine, whether it's in the saddle, whether it's on the yard, to actually show them this new way of life in terms of saying, don't open up. We don't want to be racing. We want to be enjoying the surroundings. We want to be going for a hack. How difficult is that to communicate?
It's pretty easy. It is pretty easy. Essentially, they're hacked as racehorses, but they're hacked in a string. So they quite often go out in groups. And so they're used to having that company, but they don't automatically assume that you're going to go quick. That it's a bit of a myth. And ordinarily, they're just brilliant in traffic. The Each horse is different. So some horses will appreciate a bit of letdown time. They'll appreciate just some time to chill out and to gain a bit of condition. Danger here is they start to lose muscle mass. So they can very quickly look a bit poor because they come so fit. And then when that muscle starts to break down as they relax, they haven't got an inch of fat. So sometimes you'll see people get them straight out of racing and they'll say that the horse is super, super skinny. Actually, it's your Mo Farah. It's
Yeah.
your supreme athlete. There's not an inch of fat on them. So it's just some horses do really well being let down. I personally, letting them down is hacking them out and just letting them chill. So they're going to let down anyway, because I don't want a bouncing fit racehorse. That's not what I'm looking for. So they start to lose their fitness just by chilling out with the work that you're doing. So each horse is different and it's really taking what's in front of you.
And you talk about the community of owners of the retired racehorses. How important is it to have a group of people who understand what they're going through and also to have a look at this? Like you say, some horses you think, oh, they don't look quite right, they're skinny. How important is it to have a community where you can thrash out issues or concerns?
I think fundamentally the thoroughbred is still a horse, but they're probably a little bit more high maintenance to a degree. And I think it's being in that supportive environment. It can be quite intimidating going to open clinics with beautifully bred warm bloods that have never known anything different than trotting around in an arena looking stunning and showing how beautifully bred it is, to being on your little wiry thoroughbred that's just learning to work forward into a contact rather than going around with its head where it wishes and waiting till we're going around the school and gallops. So it's being with like-minded people. It's being with people that can support you with the challenges, and they can be sharp. If they don't get something, they tend to worry, and that worry tends to come out as hot-headedness. but ordinarily they get there because they don't get it. They don't get the question. So it's learning how to bring them back down. But if you're sat on that hothead in an environment where people don't understand or get it, it can be quite intimidating and can make it a bit of a miserable time for our members. So we're
Yeah.
trying to just make it a really encouraging environment where everybody can, if your horse has a moment, everybody says, "Don't worry about it. We've been there. I mean, this is how we overcame it, or this is what worked for us." So it's just that real sort of bringing everybody on board and supporting them.
And could you share with us any success stories of any former racehorses that have gone on through your support to have a life well lived?
Do you know what? We've got just over 12,400 racehorses registered with us. I should think I've
Wow.
got 12,400 owners that can tell me what a difference that horse has made to their lives. I can't, it would be unfair to bring one to the fore, but the stories, and this is why we love it when the members give us a ring and chat to us about their horses because they become the apple of their eyes. And everybody talks about, "Oh, he does this and he's just so delightful and he's so rewarding and he's so X, Y, and Z. And don't know where I'd be without him. And everybody thought I was mad getting a racehorse and he's one." There's some lovely stories and people that have had health issues and real mental health challenges. And it's the horse that's got them out of bed in the morning. And it's the horse that has that
Mm.
intuition that, when you're having a bad day, they're just there. So some really emotive stories. And then we've got other horses that were useless on the race course, maybe didn't even make it into racing, and they're doing fabulous stuff at the top of their chosen discipline. And just because he didn't suit racing doesn't mean he's not going to be a cracking horse for whatever you want to do.
I was going to ask, how well suited are racehorses for other disciplines?
Oh, incredibly. Because you referenced that they're athletes. They absolutely are athletes. They're also so versatile because they're so smart. They learn so quickly and they're willing. They just want to learn. Their brains are like sponges. We've got people competing in your mainstream. So, like your dressage, your show jumping, your eventing, your showing. But the British Horseball team, for example, the majority of the British Horseball team are former racehorses. And for those that aren't familiar with horseball, it's be on
Yeah.
horseback. It's madness. It's crazy. It's so exciting to watch. But the horses are adapting to that sport. They're adapting. They play polo cross. They play polo. They're out there doing tent pegging and just you name it. There's the thoroughbred doing it. There's another member who drives a thoroughbred. So they've become former racehorses, becoming carriage horses. So literally
Wow.
they are doing, you name it. I can pretty much guarantee there's a racehorse or a retired racehorse out there doing the job.
And like you say, also can become
Yeah.
lawnmowers and field ornaments, because it's so interesting. You mentioned that some owners say that it's their horse that have got them through life traumas. I had a friend that unexpectedly lost their partner, and she said a lot of friends said to them, "Oh, your horses take up a lot of your time. It's another stress. Why don't you sell your horse on?" And she said, "No, the horse is the only thing that's getting me out of bed in the morning. It's my only reason to keep me motivated through the day." So, of course, our horses are a therapy to us and may not have a discipline, but may just be another
And they're being
pet.
used in therapy. We work with a number of organisations, and so Greatwood, for example, in Wiltshire, and Heroes in Oxfordshire, they're both charities that we work in partnership with. But they've got programs for children with behavioural difficulties, underprivileged children. They're working with some really challenging individuals, and the racehorses are how they're learning to interact, how they're learning to communicate. And it's fabulous. We hear these stories of children that are unable to communicate with the outside world and are feeling lost and suffering desperately with anxieties and just literally can't communicate. And they spend time with these horses and they just blossom. And that's, testament to the thoroughbred. And because they're so sensitive, they pick up on our emotions. I've never been through anything desperately traumatic, thank goodness. But I know when I've been having hard times, as we all do, has been. It's been the horses. It's even just being there with them. It just makes you clear your head. It just gives you that reason, as you say. And yeah, they cost a
Do
money.
we
They do cost a lot of money. There were two ways
Yes,
about it, but they're worth every penny.
and so does therapy. Therapy can cost a huge amount of money, can't
That's
it? So they are another form of looking after ourselves through communicating with our
very much so. And it's lovely to see. From personal experience, I've got two, and there's a little lad I teach, and he's besotted with one of them. And this horse is 17 too. He's a beast of a thing. And round this little lad, he is the kindest, gentlest soul you will ever see. And they just love people.
Do we need to change our perspective of racehorses and former racehorses and their capabilities and their temperaments? Because, like you say, so many people see them as these whooshing, galloping athletes, but actually they have a sensitive side and a capacity for so much love.
I think we do. I think the work that we've done over the last probably 20 years has helped to try and dispel those myths. And let's be honest, they're not for everybody. We spoke about dogs before. I wouldn't have a Great Dane, but the next person might love to have a Great Dane. They're not for everybody. But once they've got you, you've had it. I mean, the first one I got 25 years ago, and I've never ever gone back. I've had former racehorses ever since because it's the rewards that you get from them because they're learning all the time and you learn all the time, and that relationship is just incredible. So, there are still there's a faction of the horsey community that thinks they're all bonkers and they think, that you'd be crazy to have one. There's probably an equal number that will come back and say, "You're wrong. You're wrong. They're the best thing ever."
And what the interesting, you said they're not for everyone, Philippa. What sort of owner do you need to be to own a former racehorse?
You need to be a little bit like they are. So you need to thrive on keeping a brain busy. You've got to be happy to be able to adjust your regime to what works for them. And yeah, can be high maintenance. They can be more needy, but that's predominantly because they're more sensitive. So with a cob, for example, it might be a bit sore through its back, and the cob will soldier on and say, "It's fine, I can work through it." Whereas a thoroughbred will say, "Actually, that really hurts." They that they will tell you something much earlier than a lot of other horses will. So if something's uncomfortable, they're pretty clear about it. So yeah, so they as I say, they aren't for everybody, and it is a commitment. They do thrive on consistency, and they like to learn, and they like to have busy heads. So some people that, as I alluded to earlier, that just want to hack out very rarely. There are some horses that will just adjust to that beautifully, but the majority, it won't be enough. So every hack will be exciting.
Put it lightly. It'll be an experience. And you mentioned the level of support you can give to horses and to the owners in the post racing journey. But what sort of services do you offer if someone says, "Oh, help! I really feel like I'm out of my depth, or I feel like I'm a bit lost."
So we have various things. So we do have a helpline. So we have a helpline where they can get in touch just for advice. We have an Ask the Expert email address, so they can contact that for advice. And we have a wide range of contacts that we can point them in the right direction and link people up to the right sort of support for the situation that they're in. We have a safety net for former racehorses. So that safety net is there for people that really end up in the situation whereby they can't keep their horse or the horse is potentially vulnerable. And that could be due to the owner's financial circumstances, due to the horse's physical condition, due to behavioral challenges that owner is having with that horse. And they effectively don't know which way to turn. That's the vulnerable horse scheme, which is there for any former racehorse at any stage of their life. And what we do is we actually relocate those horses to one of our partner charities, and we fund that horse within that charity to be rehabilitated, retrained with the ultimate goal of being rehomed. So
Oh wow!
that's a the safety net that we've got in place. We've also got another mechanism called the Retraining Assessment Programme, which was introduced at the beginning of last year following the aftercare funding review. So that's first step support for racehorses recently retired. So if that horse has some challenging behaviors and the racing owner or trainer is unsure as to whether or not he's going to successfully transition to a life of leisure, we've got a program in partnership with Heroes whereby they can go there to be independently assessed for suitability. And again, the aim there is to make that assessment, start retraining the horse with the ultimate goal of finding him a perfect one-to-one home.
And you're stopping the age-old issue within horse ownership of horses being passed from pillar to post.
That's one of the things, yeah, that we're trying to prevent, certainly. It's giving people an option. Quite often with the vulnerable horses, if we trace back where that horse has been, it may well have moved homes a number of times. But that, again, is where the census steps in, really, to start to try and understand those numbers better. It'll also help us with the traceability piece. So British horse racing is the only equine industry that genuinely looks out for their horses from birth to death, because we've got the aftercare element for retired animals, and there's no other equine discipline that's so regulated whilst they're competing, but equally has that safety net for the horses and an opportunity for the horses when they retire from the sport. So that's something for racing to be really proud of. And traceability is a key piece of work in that. So we want to know where every horse bred to race is. Now, that sounds like a really big challenge. And yeah, it is a really big challenge, but we're taking steps to ensure that we can know where as many of them are as possible. And that's why the census came around, really, because we've got great figures that we've got just shy of 12,500 horses registered with us, which is fabulous. We know that on average, 2,000 horses leave the sport every year. If we look at our traction, it's pretty good considering that registration is completely optional and by attraction. But the level of compliance with change of ownership with thoroughbreds and actually all passport issuing offices is only about 20%. So that's what we're looking to drive. So as we know how many other horses are out there, so that we can then start to develop our programs to try and encourage everybody to come and be part of this community.
And talking of that community, how can the questions listening or watching this podcast get involved, contribute to your mission, your initiatives, and safeguard the well-being of former racehorses?
First and foremost, they can complete the census. That would be a huge bonus. And also, even if it's just a thoroughbred and has never been in training, you can still take part in the census. So part of our longer term goals is to look at actually embracing and looking out for those horses that never went into training as well. So they were just bred to race. So the more people that complete the census, it helps us shape how we do that in the future. But to get involved, we are a charity, um, but it's completely free to join. So if you've got a former racehorse, even if he only went into training, you can register him with us for nothing, which is all on our website. And that gives you access to our entire education program. It gives you access to the panel of experts, all of us in the office. It's all there and it costs you nothing. 5 minutes of your time on the internet to get them registered. And yeah, the more the merrier. We're here obviously to help to build that community, and we've got lots of exciting plans for the future. So the more the merrier, really.
Philippa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've learnt a lot, and I think you've inspired a lot of people listening and spread the word to former racehorse owners and maybe people that know those who've got thoroughbreds as well that were previously racing in another life. Thank you so much for coming
Oh,
on.
it's been amazing.
It's been absolutely
Thank
fascinating.
you.
The Horse Welfare Board has launched the first thoroughbred census in Great Britain in collaboration with Hartpury University. The census is designed to improve the traceability of thoroughbreds throughout their lives.
Let's now bring in Saranna Jordan, Horseracing Liaison and lecturer at Hartpury University. part of the team behind the census that we've just been hearing about with Philippa. Saranna is an industry practitioner turned lecturer that has extensive experience in working with racehorses in training and also the rehabilitation, care, and management of horses in and out of training. Welcome, Saranna. Saranna, kicking off straight into it, as a lecturer at Hartpury University, what is the university's role in conducting the survey?
Hartpury is renowned for being one of the, we like to think, one of the leading equine institutions, education institutions, not just nationally, but internationally. We have quite a lot of international students. And since we gained university status, we are growing in our research. Hartpury have always had quite a significant research output in the equestrian world. Dr. Catherine Nankervis has done a lot with the aqua treadmills. She's been a leader in her field. And Dr. Jane Williams, who I'm working with on this project, she's the head of research at Hartpury. She was really keen to get involved. Both Jane Williams and I have ex-racehorses ourselves. And so we're just very keen on the idea of the project, and we're really behind it.
And what is the mission behind the Thoroughbred Census?
So the mission is that every thoroughbred that's born in the UK is registered at 30 days old. That's required by law. And when the horses are in training, the British Horse Racing Authority has a record of every horse in training. They know where they are. Once those horses leave the industry, then it becomes a bit difficult to know how many are there, where they are, and where they're going to go next or where they are next. And so basically, the BHA, in conjunction with the Horse Welfare Board, which was set up by the BHA, are looking at traceability, a life well lived, a lifetime care of the racehorse.
And how do you hope to find all of these racehorses? Because a huge number of racehorses get trained each year and also leave racing each year. How will you track them down?
This is the great question, because we actually don't know how many is. We know how many are trained each year, but we don't know how many leave the industry each year. And so, hence the census. Something similar was conducted in Australia and also in Ireland. But the reason our census project is open for 6 months is in the hope that we capture those horses. But yes, the how is, it can be a challenge. So we are doing a lot with social media. And of course, I believe that everyone's seeing it because the algorithms are such now. When I type anything about census in, because I'm working on it, it pops up. But that can be misleading in itself. So how to reach those people that potentially are not necessarily on social media. So I've been doing other things, as have ROR and obviously GBR and the people behind this Horse Welfare Board. I put up a board in my local feed store. I've been to see vet and distributed posters, basically. But yeah, we really are not sure. I think the other thing to mention is that ROR do great work and they have big numbers registered with them. But there are lots of people, myself included. I have 4 former racehorses here, that they're here because I love having them and I hack about on them, and I don't do a lot with them. I don't compete them. One of them's completely retired. He doesn't get ridden anymore. He's been here for over 10 years, and now he's going to live out his best life. So it's only because I'm involved in this. But would I register with ROR? Not necessarily, because I'm not looking to compete. So I think for some people, they might be thinking either, oh, my horse never raced, or oh, my horse wasn't very good, or I don't compete him now. He just has a second, or her, they just have a second life with me. They're the people we're looking to reach, because I think ROR are doing a fantastic job with reaching the people that are competing their thoroughbreds.
And there's a team behind the census, but what do you bring with your expertise to the census and to the project?
What do I mean? Prior to becoming a lecturer, I'm an industry lecturer. So I've spent many years actually in racing at grassroots. I was a work rider for many years, a little bit on the flat, but we're on radio, but if you saw it, I'm quite tall. So I was more in the jumping world. And I have lots of friends that train racehorses. I'm totally invested in the thoroughbred. I love racing, but I also am very passionate about horses. Hence my collection at home. I find it very easy. I have a terrible, I have a confession that I have a terrible horse habit, and I'm getting
Saranna, tell us about your collection of racehorses and what they're like, because I think we all have this perception that ex-racers are fast and they bolt. They just want to open up and spread their legs across the ground and race as fast as they can. What are your four like at home and out hacking?
Oh, they're very, very mixed. It's a really good question, actually, because one of the reasons I'm passionate about thoroughbred, and I have at certain times in my life ridden other kinds of horses. I've ridden cobs, I've ridden warbloods as well. But what I love about the thoroughbred is when they're on the same page, they're so on the same page. They're so giving. They're such quick learners. That's how we've bred them. We've bred them to be super receptive, have great stamina, be sharp. Sometimes that can have not the best of implications, but we want them to be responsive and reactive. And obviously, the best thoroughbreds are just that. But they are trained to gallop and run, but it's not quite as simple as just bolting. When you watch a string of racehorses in training, they are actually being held to work. It's a bit like really. It's a bit like a marathon runner or a sprinter. They might have short, sharp bursts if they're being trained for the flat, or they might be trained more slowly and on the bridle. Well, all horses should be trained on the bridle, but do you see what I mean? It's quite different. They are very exposed to, they go racing. There are lots of people there, crowd, tannoys, food outlet. There's a lot going on at the races. They travel to the races in a horse box. And so quite often a horse that has raced is it's easy in lots of ways. All those things are not a surprise to it because it's actually already been habituated to crowd, to tannoys, to that kind of thing. And traveling quite often, the cob doesn't want to go up the ramp, doesn't want to get in the box, and they can be quite stubborn about it. A lot of former racehorses, I appreciate not all, but a lot of them will just walk in because that's what they've always done. And hacking on the road. So my four particularly, they're great in traffic. Although I'm very rural, we see a lot of heavy machinery, tractors. They're excellent on the roads, really lovely to hack. And they're always happy. They're not, they've got a lustful life. Might tell you something about me because I've got Springer Spaniels as well. I like a bit of joie de vivre, and definitely the horses have got that. But one I love so much, he was not a good racehorse. He didn't really want to race. He didn't do anything. He didn't say no at the start or anything, but he just got slower and slower throughout the race and wasn't a great racehorse, but he's a lovely horse in lots of other ways. He's good as gold to do. He's a joy to have. I can load him in the trailer on my own, take him off all on my own. That's quite a deal. He's massive. He's about 17.1.
Wow.
We've got another one that's an ex-flat horse, and he retired last year. He had a little bit of an injury to his leg, nothing much, but the trainer was also the breeder of him, and he wanted him to have a second career. That's the other thing to say about a lot of racehorses, is even if they're not very good as a racehorse, they quite often they make good horses for lots of other things, and all different. So he, at the moment, we've had him just over a year, and he's just learning to do other things. He's a great hack. He gets very buzzy jumping, but that'll take time. But another one we had from a wonderful trainer that my son worked for, and when he finished his racing career, he gave him to my son. I think that's fair to say, actually.
Wow.
Only one of them we bought. We've been given them all by people.
Wow. That's amazing.
And he ran point to pointing last year, and my son, who was a novice rider, had his first winner on his own horse.
Oh, wow.
He's now retired completely from point to pointing and racing, so he will just live with us. And he's just had a few months off, and we're deciding we will probably get him in quite soon and start just hacking around and doing that kind of thing. And then, as I said, our big old boy that is my husband treats him like a dog. We've had him for over 10 years. He had run on the flat, over hurdles and over fences. He's Argentinian bred.
Wow.
He's travelled around. That's the thing about the travelling. They're quite used to it. And he's just been a lovely friend. He's almost like a person, but he really hasn't got the best legs out, and he's nearly 20, so he just lives in the field. I think also I would say that when the time comes for him that he's not happy and comfortable, then we will make the strong decision. But at the moment, he is happy and comfortable, and we do what needs to be done. Our horses spend a lot of time in the field, but if they need to come in, they can. So as much time out as they can, and then in when they need to. So that's quite a long bit about our horses.
But a
But
real,
as you can
yeah.
see, I'm excited about them. And I know that there are hundreds of other people out there in the same boat, and they want to tell their horse's story.
Yeah, and really interesting as well, and lovely to hear that you're excited about each of your individual horses and their personalities, despite what they're doing, whether they're doing a bit of point to point, whether they're hacking, whether they're coming back into work, or whether they are just enjoying their life out in the field, being a horse and getting that time off that they never had when they were younger and competing, which is, I think, so wonderful to hear that side of a ex-race horse's life. And I think also comes on to talk about the racehorse welfare and horse welfare. We've heard from you about how you're looking after their physical health, their mental health, and their well-being. How will the census not only keep track of where all the racehorses go when they leave the industry, but also keep track of their welfare and how to look after them?
I think by knowing where they are will be a great start for how to best support the people who've got horses. I think it's fair to say as well that sometimes racehorses, as you've already alluded to, they're a bit of a Ferrari rather than a Ford Focus. They're worried to anyone. Or I shouldn't have, they have this. So sometimes it is fair to, mine are all really good now, but when you get them in open spaces, they've been programmed to gallop. And that can be disconcerting to a rider that isn't used, he's very much used to a quieter horse that wouldn't necessarily want to go galloping off. It's how best to support the people that have a former racehorse or a thoroughbred that maybe has never raced, that may find that they get into difficulty. I think another misconception is that they need to be pumped full of food. They don't, but they do need enough. And actually, that's a management situation. And I know that the ROR do a great job of supporting new owners. And I think that's really important. So it's trying to reach these communities, create these communities, find out, be better placed to find out what people are needing with their horses. But also, we are really excited to learn more about people's stories of their horses. And that's the census is being conducted. So there are a few demographic questions, who you are, what do you do with your horse? And they will be analysed with a frequency analysis when it comes to that. But then the more open-ended questions about what you do, like where did you get your horse from? Did you get your horse straight out of training from a trainer or somewhere else? And that will help us using something called thematic analysis to see the themes start to emerge, and we'll start to see where these horses are coming from. So it means that the racing industry as a whole have a better understanding of what happens to their horses, because actually things have changed dramatically over the last 10 years in terms of racehorse trainers. When a horse comes, I alluded to earlier, I said that my horses were given to me.
Yes.
They came from trainers that the trainer immediately they'll quite often stamp the passport with a non-racing agreement, which means you can't then race them again. If the trainer's decided it's best for that horse not to race, they deal with that. And actually, that's something I've seen change over the last probably 10 to 15 years. And all these initiatives, they don't happen overnight, but it's really coming into play. Any horse I've had, the trainer stamps the passport, and they do tend to keep in touch. And we tend to keep in touch with our trainers as well and send them photographs. And it might be that the trainer then sends those on to the former owner if we don't know them. So yeah, it's about the support, the community, and the ongoing traceability factor.
And what educational resources or support or services will be available to thoroughbred owners as a result of this initiative and the survey?
Well, I think that needs yet to be determined, but ROR are definitely a port of call. I don't know, because I'm not on the Horse Welfare Board. I don't know if the BHA are thinking of setting something up, but this is working in conjunction with ROR, who already have that in place. There are other thoroughbred centres as well that are doing a fantastic job all over the country. Some of them are quite big thoroughbred censuses. Yeah. centres with multiple horses.
And how we talked earlier about the challenges of trying to track down all of these horses as part of the census. But how can equestrian communities and the general public contribute to spreading awareness about the census and encouraging people to take part?
I think just to say that it doesn't matter what you do with your horse. This is just about looking to see who's got what where, not
Yes.
there's no judgment on this. So spread the word and share the word. And I typed into Google just before I came onto the program I just typed in TB census UK, and a lot of equine associations have been really good with this. So the
Brilliant.
British Eventing have posted, Beaver, the British Equine Veterinary Association, they've posted, the Master Craftsmen of Saddlers have posted. So a lot of the associations are really getting behind this, because I've yet to hear anybody say anything negative about it. Everyone's excited and understand what we're trying to achieve. So I would just encourage everybody to fill in the census, because it will just give us a better idea. And please spread the word. And if you see anything on social media, could you share it? We've also got a competition running at the moment.
Ooh.
So we're looking for people to post their picture and tell their story of their thoroughbred.
Ah.
You'll see that on social media, I hope, but look for it. And the prize is £500 worth of product.
Oh.
I think all horse owners would be grateful to receive. And that's just the first one. There are going to be more prizes coming out from now until Christmas.
That's very exciting. So if you're listening and you have an ex-racer, or you know someone, maybe you've got a friend or a family member who you know has an ex-racer, please get in touch. Please get and do that census and get involved. Also, so interesting, you mentioned judgment, and I think this word comes up in the equestrian industry a lot, whether it's just at livery yards or whether it's at competition centres, wherever it might be. But just stressing the fact that your racehorse doesn't have had to have done anything post its racing life. It can just be your much loved pet, as yours
Absolutely.
are in the
As
field.
mine are. Yeah. I think possibly we think there are greater numbers, just people like us that just enjoy them, that track them, that maybe go on fun rides. And it's just trying to find there is no judgment. I think we do worry about that. Actually, not just in equestrianism. I think it's true of life. We're always wary of being judged, and social media it means that people can judge from behind the keyboard, which just I say to my student when we have a lecture environment, it's a safe learning space. That's what we want to create for everybody. And the only time it's not safe is if people feel fearful of being judged. So I think you
Mm.
need to flip that on its head and look at, are you judging others? And if you are, you want to review that. And if you aren't, just try and embrace the culture that we need to all be a bit kinder to each other. Because I think equestrianism on the whole, we all need to work together for the best interests of our horses.
And before you go, Saranna, what are the potential long-term benefits of this census, of having a comprehensive database of retired racehorses for the equestrian industry as a whole?
I think people are beginning to recognise the versatility of the thoroughbreds. So I know you've spoken to Philippa from ROR, but she will have told you there's such a wide variety of things these horses are doing. I know, for example, the polo industry, they take a lot of their smaller ex-race horses, and they don't have to be an ex-race horse. They can be a thoroughbred as well that has never raced. It's still for all those thoroughbreds. But it's looking at the versatility of all that they can achieve. And actually, a lot of the horses, particularly off the flat, they might finish their career and be quite young, and they're well able for another career. They actively enjoy work, so it's finding what best suits that horse. And I think that's key as well. I think it's important for those people that are maybe looking to get a thoroughbred or a former racehorse.
Mm.
You need to think about, what do you want to do with it, and then you need to get the right horse for your job, rather than getting a horse and trying to make a horse do what you want. How is it? Because some of the flat horses are very good at dressage and not great at jumping, because they've not necessarily hone those skills. Some of them are good at jumping with that horse, and that just depends on each individual horse. Always think of the horse as an individual. I think that's true of all breeds as well.
And Saranna, for those listening who want to get in touch and be part of the census right now, how do they do that? How do they find it?
I think if you're on social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, then if you type in Thoroughbred Census, you will find a ruck of information. But if you just type into Google Thoroughbred Census UK, you should be able to find it that way. Because as I said, any association that you may be interested in or follow, you can find it through them. And it is just a simple link. And the questionnaire takes as long as you want, really. One of the things I would say is that we do ask for passport information. And that means that you need to have your passport handy. But it just means that we then know where that horse has come from. We've got the passport number. And it's very specific. Every thoroughbred that's born, because of that 30-day full registration rule, they're issued with a passport and their own unique number.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a joy to hear about the census, but also to hear about the stories behind your ex-racers and your collection in the field. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to be on today. Thank you.
Thank you to Philippa and Saranna. Thank you both for joining us on today's episode. Don't forget, if you are a thoroughbred owner, maybe you know one, maybe you're related to one, spread the word about the census and get signed up. There's lots of goodies and competitions too, so don't forget to check that out. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Curious Equestrian Podcast wherever you watch or listen or get your podcasts from. And join us next time here on the Curious Equestrian Podcast for plenty of inspirational conversations about horsemanship.